Brother Beers, confession being good for the soul. And so when he called me, he said, he gave me permission. He said, can you pull something out of the archives if you need to? I was like, oh yeah, man. And I had something already kind of ticking over that I'd done before, and I didn't know where I'd done it. So I got done studying, and I keep a log because that's a wise thing to do. And I hadn't done it all the years, but I started one, and I went back to enter it, and the title auto-filled in for me. So I've done this one before in the last 2 years, and about 6 months ago, y'all heard it. I said, well, I'm not going to do that. And so I sat there, and I started to really say, okay, God, where do we need to go? And I feel like He's given me a word for somebody this morning. It may not be for everyone, but it's kind of like my old pastor used to say. He'd say, if this word isn't for you right now, tuck it away because you might need it one day. And so I confess this is probably not going to be the level that we've enjoyed for the last several weeks. My father-in-law up here knocking out of the park every day. But this is what I feel like. So anyway, I want to talk to you for a few minutes, and I hopefully this won't be too long, but and talk a little bit about God finish what He starts. God finishes the things that He starts. And so have you ever started something and you didn't finish it? I didn't have to ask for a show of hands. Everybody, that's me. I've got a barn full of half-started projects and things that I was going to fix. I was going to get around to it, and I never did. And a lot of that stuff is stuff that my dad was going to fix, and he never got around to it, and I inherited his stuff. And, you know, we walk through our house, and sometimes my wife is sweetly pointing out things that I didn't finish occasionally. I want that. I'd like to see that painted again, and I'd like to see that done this way. And yes, ma'am, and I'll get on that. And then time goes on, and distractions come, and 6 months later, I'm looking at it going, I really need to do that. And we get into that zone, right? Maybe it's not something around the house. Maybe it's a book that we meant to read, a class that we meant to take, something that we were going to do to make ourselves better. And somewhere along the line, after the excitement faded, it just kind of stalled out. There's something about unfinished things that bothers us. They feel incomplete. They feel unresolved. And it feels like something is missing, and yet you know that it's on you. There's a story about a portrait that was being painted of Franklin Roosevelt. And April 12th, 1945, the artist is sitting there. She's starting a watercolor portrait. And she's working on it. He's sitting for her. In the middle of the session, he complains of a severe headache, and it collapsed. 2 hours later, he was gone. And the portrait was never finished. It wasn't because the artist didn't want to finish it. It was because the subject was nowhere around. I want you to think about that morning. God has a scripted plan for every one of our lives. He has a purpose that He designed you for. I think I said it the other day in here. I teaching youth. You use real basic analogies, and I brought a set of wrenches to youth service, and I said there's a nut for every wrench. It doesn't matter if you're not the same as that one or that one or that one. God puts somebody out there that you fit, that you're supposed to minister to. And I've done it with golf clubs, Brother Roundtree, but we were chipping across the gym with wiffle balls, and I still embarrassed myself. I'm just not a golfer. I love trying though. I'll call you next time I do that one. And so whatever choice we make, God is working within us, though. He's trying to help us to get to the place that He wants us to be. But He also gives us free moral will. Brother Gardner, I get to choose whether or not I'm going to follow His plan. I get to choose whether or not I'm going to walk in the way that He sets before me. I get to choose whether or not I'm going to do what He set out there. We always, when you're praying with people, Brother Jake taught the altar etiquette class, and I loved it, and it's right up my alley, because I always got frustrated when somebody comes up there and they're just going to force whatever's happening. If somebody doesn't want the Holy Ghost, I can't give it to them. I can't give it to them anyway. And so we have to be willing to understand that that explanation, hey, God's not going to force this on you, but if you want it, He'll give it to you. It's a gift. It's there. It's for you. And so we need to realize that whatever choice we make, God's not going to be surprised or thwarted in His plan for what He's doing with your life. It's your choice to make. And if I choose not to follow His will, He'll pick up somebody else to do what needs to be done. God desires you to settle into that script, into His plan for your life, but He's going to allow you to go your own way. However, don't make a mistake about this. If you choose to follow your own human inclinations, if you choose to follow after the flesh instead of following God's plan, it doesn't deter His ultimate plan. His will still be done, just with a different tool. His purpose will still be accomplished. So He'll use your decisions to work towards good outcomes for other people if He needs to. I've seen it happen. Somebody makes a terrible choice, and God uses that to work somebody else in, to help somebody else. He always works towards the good. Here's the thing we want to hold on to today, though. God's work is never finished. What He started in you, as long as you're willing to allow Him to complete it, He's going to keep working on you. The Bible teaches us that every believer gets 2 calls from God. First call is the call to salvation. That first call is the one that says, you're in the family now. The second call is sitting on that foundation, and it's a call to service. God didn't call you to be changed, to be saved, just to let you sit and not be anything else. We're not called to just sit and be a lump on a log. Bump on a log? What's it? Bump on a log. You're not called to be a bump on a log after you get saved. You're called to serve. You're called to be used. You're called to help someone else. He doesn't save you to sit. He saves you to serve. Philippians 2:13, Paul reminds us, for it is God that worketh in you both to will and to do of His good pleasure. That means He's not only working through you, but He's working in you. It means that He's going to shape your desires. He's going to shape your abilities. He's going to mold you, and He's going to provide direction for you. It's important that we get that. It's not an insignificant role no matter what you're doing. Brother Glaser, I can't teach. That's okay. Brother Glaser, I can't sing. That's okay. Brother Glaser, I can't do and insert whatever it is that you've been looking at thinking, man, if I could just do that. And realize that whatever your role is in a kingdom, it's not insignificant. Whether you are standing behind a pulpit with a mic in your hand, whether you're greeting people at the front door, whether you're picking up trash in the parking lot, or whether you're cleaning toilets here and nobody ever knows it. It's not insignificant. Because it takes all of those things to make the church work. It takes all of those things for the body to function. Some of the greatest ministry I've ever known was from a man that did nothing but encourage. Hey, can I tell you something? It doesn't matter who you are. You need a cheerleader in your corner. I get text messages from this guy all the time. He just took me under his wing. He told me one time around the altar, he said, Brother Jimmy, I don't have any sons in the truth. I'm just adopting you. And man, I started weeping. Just, tearing up thinking about it. And he preached a little bit, and he went out and he helped some other churches, but he was always careful. He felt like his first calling was to encourage those around him. And he did an incredible job. I still have text messages from Brother Mike that I go back and read sometimes. And I go, man, I would love to get another text like that. I would love to hear that encouraging voice again. And it's not because I just can't live without it, but it's because it helps. We need that in our lives. And so don't ever mistake what you're doing for being too small in the kingdom. The strength of the church comes from every part doing its work. So let me ask you something. Where has God placed you right now? Not where you wish you were, not what you think you ought to be doing. Where has He placed you right now? Because oftentimes we get put in the seasons that feel like just a season of frustration and anger. And God, why am I going through this? And why am I dealing with this? And why is this happening to me this way? And the whole time, God's developing you. Think about the clay on the potter's wheel. He's molding and He's shaping. And I started praying with someone here a while back, and I felt something come into me. And I started explaining to him, you need to realize that you're the vessel. He's going to shape you how He wants to shape you. He's going to mold you how He wants to mold you for His purpose, for His use. And then He's going to put in you what He wants to pour out. But the sooner we can realize that I'm nothing but a vessel, I serve at His whim. I'm going to get filled with whatever He wants to fill me with. I'm going to get poured out wherever He wants to pour me out. So not where I wish I was, but where am I at right now? Because that's where your calling is being lived out. We don't live in a future, and we don't live in a past. We don't live looking back and going, I wish I'd have done that differently. You've got to serve here and now. You need to recognize that God has a specific work for you. If you start reading Acts 23, Paul's gone through intense pressure. He's been questioned. He's been opposed. He's been put in a dangerous situation. And in that moment, God speaks to him. 23:11 says, in the night following, the Lord stood by him. That's a message right there. The Lord stood by him and said, be of good cheer, Paul, for as thou hast testified of me in Jerusalem, so must thou bear witness also at Rome. Hear what God does here. He doesn't give Paul every detail. He doesn't explain the process. He gives him a promise. You will testify in Rome. In spite of everything that's going on, in spite of the pressure that he's under, in spite of the things that are going on, God just says, you're going to testify here. How many of you love to know a destination with no idea how to get there? I think it's unanimous. Can I be honest with you guys? As a young person, I'm old enough that we went to Astroworld. Yeah, I'm that old. And most of you are too, so I don't feel bad about it. And so I can remember getting on roller coasters, and y'all remember Grease Lightning? I remember when it opened up, and I'm looking up at the end of that track, Brother Bierce, and I'm going, what happens if you just keep going? And well, thanks for that. And in my mind, I've already created the worst case scenario. How far will that cart go before it falls? And all of these things. And I'm looking at that, I'm going, I can see the track, but I don't see the brakes. And all too often when you're living for God, it's like that. You can kind of see the way it's going to go, but you don't see all the safety measures. You don't see the guardrails that He's put around your path. You don't recognize what God's put before you to slow you down in the sharp curves and to keep you grounded where it's coming over the top, and to understand that God has got a plan for your life, that you're going to be okay. We ride a four-wheeler around the property sometimes, and my little boys, they'll ride with me, and they always want to go fast, but I can always tell when I'm going a little bit faster than they're comfortable with. Well, Beaudry sits right in front of me, and he props his arms up on my arms. I'm driving, and I feel them hands start to tighten up. And I know if I keep going any faster, he's going to try and say, Daddy, slow down. But I've noticed as we've done it more and more, he's started to get more comfortable and those hands stay relaxed. In places I used to go fairly fast, now he's just like, we're good. Can I tell you that that's like living for God? When you're living for God and you get accustomed to following His plan and His will, and you say, God, I trust you enough. And when He says you're going to testify in Rome, you're like, cool. Don't know how. Don't know when. Don't get the timeline, God. I don't see a map. I don't see the car waiting to take me. But you said it. Cool. Because we want the full roadmap, and God has given us a destination and asked us to trust Him with the journey. As the story goes, in the 11th century, King Henry III of Bavaria grew tired of court life and the pressure of being a monarch. And so he made an application to the prior of the local monastery and asked to be accepted as a contemplative and spend the rest of his life in a monastery. The prior said, Your Majesty, do you understand that the pledge here is one of obedience? And it's going to be very hard for you because you've been a king. Henry says, I understand. The rest of my life I will be obedient to you as Christ leads you. The prior said, Then I will tell you what to do. Go back to your throne and serve faithfully in the place God has put you. Think about that. Sometimes the word you want from God is you're asking God for a release from the very thing He's called you to. And we've got to be sensitive enough to say, God, if you tell me I need to do it, I'm going to do it. And it doesn't matter. When King Henry died, a statement was written, the king learned to rule by being obedient. When you tire of your roles and your responsibilities and all those things that you're doing, it helps to remember that God planted you in a certain place and told you to grow where you're planted. Obedience is not about changing your position. It's about being faithful in it. I told somebody this a while back. Most of you know I spent a lot of years as a youth pastor. The thing I hated the most was to watch guys be a youth pastor for 3 or 4 years, and then I'm going out on an evangelistic field, and I'm going to go pastor a church. And I believe that some people are called to do that. I believe that some people are called to take those steps that way. But I saw too many young men that were just using things as stepping stones to get to an end goal without saying, God, use it in according to your plan, according to your will. We don't always want to do what God's calling us to do. We don't always want to put in the work. We don't always want to put in the time in prayer. We don't always want to put in the time studying the Word and reading through things and getting into that deep place where God gives us things. And we get tired and we get discouraged. You might ever struggle and say, God, does what I'm doing even matter? Does the song I sing even matter? Did the lesson I taught even matter? You know what? I'll say it like that because those are things I've dealt with. With Glaser, you have a mic in your hand. You must. No. I'm the least. You wonder, God, is this effort that we're putting in worth it? Does driving a van really matter, bro? It does. 1,000% it does. Just showing up, and if you're showing up and just sitting on a pew and leading worship for your family, it matters more than you will ever understand. I can tell you, singing on the platform and watching kids grow up and their babies and then having them in my youth group, I can tell you which ones are successful. And I can almost forecast it when they're children watching how their families worship and how mom and dad lead them and how mom and dad have them in a prayer room. It matters. Y'all, I know that I'm providing entertainment when you're in a prayer room. I get it. I got one boy crawling on my back, one under the chair, one playing ping pong with whatever he's got in his hand. I've got them bouncing rocks off of windows. They're talking loud. I'm over there saying, God, move in this service. And he's over there going, Dad, why is red red? And he ain't quiet about it. I get it. If that's entertaining for you and that helps you make it through prayer service, then they're meeting their calling. If it's not, I'm sorry, mind your business. I'm working with them. We're getting it done. I done went to meddling, sorry. Because I understand a principle. My boys may not know everything they need to know to get down and sling snot and pray in tongues like the rest of y'all. But they do know that before church, you go to the prayer room. And I'm building a habit in them that down the road will help them. Regardless of the struggle, regardless of what's happening, they know that there's a place that they can go and it's okay. They can be faithful to that prayer room and they know that it matters. You know what? We get tired. We get discouraged. We're wondering if it even matters, and I'm telling you it does. Galatians 6:9 says, let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. Let me tell you something. Your faithfulness matters more than you can comprehend. Here's the part that we don't like to talk about. Paul receives that promise from God. You're going to testify in Rome. And limousine just pulled up and opened the door and there's a waiter standing there. Come on, get in your car, sir. And no, that ain't what happened. In fact, the Bible tells us that it got harder. More than 40 men made a vow that they would not eat or drink until Paul was dead. That's serious opposition. I mean, think about it. Some of us will miss church if our tie doesn't match right, if the knot doesn't feel right, or whatever small insignificant excuse you can come up with. I've told y'all stories. I was growing up on the Sabine River when I was a kid. We got 4 feet of water in the bottom of the house. My dad's working out of town. My mom with her old school Pentecostal beehive hairdos driving an outboard motor, and we're going to church in suits and ties. I'll never forget the looks we got from them old river rats running up and down that river. What in the world? I saw one almost run his boat onto a sandbar looking at us going by. Yeah, that old hairdo. Tie flapping over your shoulder, right? But my mom and dad put something in me that said you don't miss unless you have to. They put something in me that said it matters, and it doesn't matter what the opposition is. It matters that you're working to overcome it. If you're doing something that matters for God, you're going to face resistance. Not you might face resistance, you will face resistance. Because the enemy doesn't ignore what threatens him. Here's the key to it. Opposition isn't a sign that you're off track. It's a sign that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Let me pause there. I feel something. When you're dealing with opposition in your life, you need to check it and find out what it is. Godly correction and guidance is not opposition. That's the GPS. Opposition from the enemy tells you that you're getting into his play area and he ain't happy about it. And you need to keep rolling. Jesus said in John 15 and 18, if the world hates you, you know that it hated me before it hated you. So when resistance comes, it doesn't need to shake your faith. It should steady it. When guidance comes from the man of God, it means that it should shape you and it should help you make sure you're on the right direction. There's a difference there. God's never surprised by what's going on around you. He's never shaken up. I promise you, nothing has ever happened to you and God went, oh my. When things happen in your life, God's looking at it going, okay, let's see how He handles this. I've made a way of escape for him already. Let's see if he takes it. Even though there's a plot against Paul, something unexpected happened. Paul's nephew overhears the plan and he warns Paul. Paul tells a Roman commander, and all of a sudden, an entire military escort was arranged. Hundreds of soldiers are arranged to get Paul safely to where he's supposed to go. No muss, no fuss. God says, I can handle that. 40 people plotting? Nothing. Because there's a truth here. God is not surprised. Nothing that comes against you catches Him off guard. Isaiah 54 and 17 starts with, no weapon formed against thee shall prosper. It didn't say weapons wouldn't be formed. It didn't say that nothing's ever going to happen and scare you. But He said it's not going to prosper. Understand, prospering is not in my economy or your economy. It's in God's economy. Some of those things will impact you, but they're not going to prosper against the kingdom. So here's where we got to end. There's a core promise. Philippians 1 and 6, being confident of this very thing, that He which had begun a good work in you will perform it until the day of Christ. God will finish what He starts. Even in creation, you look in Genesis chapter 2. Thus the heaven and the earth were finished, and on the seventh day God ended His work which He had made. God completes His work. He does that in a few ways in your life. Number one, He completes His work in you. Your salvation, your growth, your transformation. And number two, He completes His work through you with your influence, your ministry, your impact on others. Can I tell you again, you're not a half-finished and forgotten project sitting on a dusty shelf in God's barn. Hear me this morning. I don't care if you feel stuck. I don't care if you feel behind. I don't care if you feel like things just aren't moving like you wanted them to. Hear me. You're not some half-finished project that God's ignoring. You're a work in progress. You're a work in progress. You're being honed. You're being shaped. You're being molded. You're being set up for whatever it is that He's got planned for you. I believe with all my heart that until you take your dying breath, He's still working in you to use you. I've met people that felt like they missed their moment. I've met people that felt like they failed too many times. I've met people that felt like I've done too much, I've messed up too bad, and I can't recover from this. Understand with me, my wife and I were talking about this the other day. What you see and what you measure is through your eyes. And when we try to understand God, we're trying to measure the infinite with the finite. It doesn't work. I got tape measures in the barn, Brother Jose. I use them. I can tell you, this podium is, 23 and a half inches wide, right? I'm probably way off, man. Sorry. I can take measurements. I can test things. I can look at the temperature on the thermostat. I know what the temperature is. I can measure the sound. You can do all kinds of measurements. And those things make us feel comfortable in our own little construct. Notice what I said, in our construct. In my own world, I can measure things and it makes me feel good. I can look at the clock and I can tell you there's 10:33 because we haven't put a battery in that one yet. I got to do better. I'm sorry. It's ADHD talking. I can look around and I can measure everything in my life except what God is doing. Because God doesn't operate in my economy. And God doesn't operate by my constraints. And so when I realize that it doesn't matter what my thought process is around it, because I have to get into the Word and get into my prayer closet and make sure that what I am thinking is in alignment with what He's thinking. I found myself praying, God, give me peace about the season I'm in. Not a frustration about the season I haven't yet attained. It's hard to pray that prayer. Because we see moments and we try to draw conclusions based on the moment. In my economy, 2 plus 2 always makes 4. In God's economy, it makes whatever He decides it's going to be. And so God sees the finished work where I see the moment. I'm looking at clues. I'm seeing through a glass darkly, as it were, and God understands what He's building at the end. And so if God started something in you, He's committed to finishing it. So the question now becomes, would you trust Him enough to stay faithful where you are? Would you trust Him enough when it looks like there's roadblocks in front of you the whole way down the road? Would you trust Him enough to climb aboard when I can't see the brakes and I don't understand the safety measures? Will I trust Him enough to realize that even though I don't see the full picture, He's got a plan and I have to trust that it's sovereign? Because one day when it's all said and done, your life's not an unfinished portrait anymore. It's a completed masterpiece of His faithfulness. God always finishes what He starts. Amen. That's it.